Hey you guys, welcome to part two. For me, it's just no time has passed at all. I talked for way too long in the first video, so I'm cutting this video in half. I hope that's okay with you. Sometimes that happens. This topic is just so in depth. If you did not go watch part two or part one, I highly suggest you go back and watch Respectful Parenting part one. In that video, I explained what respectful parenting is, why we're kind of calling it and switching more to calling it respectful parenting, but it's the same thing as like peaceful, gentle, attached, but why some of those titles and names have some misconceptions about them. I feel like we had a really great conversation about what respectful parenting actually is, and that it's not staying calm all the time. That's not the goal. And so if you didn't see that, definitely go check that out. It's definitely worth a listen, I think. My bird is just going off because I've been up here for a little while filming the first half of this video, so I'm really sorry if that's a distracting sound. He's like whistling and singing at me to try and get my attention to make me come downstairs, because normally I'm downstairs by now. Okay, so in that first video I said I was going to talk about what it means to be a respectful parent, how we can achieve this, and I talked a lot about how our children don't actually need us to be a calm parent. We don't need to be calm to be a respectful parent, and that's not the goal of respectful parenting. I talked a ton about that, which is why we are carrying over into part two. I said I was going to address two questions that I got on Instagram about this that I really liked and wanted to talk about. One was respectful parenting after a traumatic childhood, which is totally me. Again, you can go back in previous Sip and Shares, just click playlists and go to Sip and Share, and you can find a couple years ago I shared my story and how I was in foster care. I came from an abusive environment. Then I went through foster care for a little bit. I was adopted. I was abused in my adoptive family. Like, I totally had a traumatic childhood. If you really want to like get into the depths of my story, you can go watch, I think I did like 3 parts of that years ago, because it's a big thing to tell. A lot of people who are respectful parenting did not come from respectful parenting. Some of the lucky ones definitely did, but most people didn't come from a respectful parenting upbringing, and we're trying to break the cycle. We're trying to break a family cycle. We're trying to break toxic cycles. We're trying to do better for our children. And so if you did not come from that style of parenting, and you're trying to do differently with your child, just remember that you're not alone. Most of us are in that situation, and I want to talk about that in this video. And then the other thing was actually a question about bedtime with older children and like struggling with that. And it's funny that this came up because it's something I was struggling with just a couple weeks ago. And I had to reach out to one of my friends who practices respectful parenting, and I really had to dig for some perspective. And I just think it's just kind of a hilarious synchronicity, and I wanted to talk about that. Okay, so again, please go watch part one if you haven't, because I feel like you just will not get the full depth of this whole conversation if you don't go watch part one. But let's get into parenting after respectful parenting after a traumatic childhood. What does this even look like? Okay, so like I said in my first video, one of my favorite Instagram accounts is The Reconnected Parenting, and to do this video, some things I really resonated with, I screenshotted so that I could use them as launching points to talk about. And so I just want to directly read one of the things they shared. I highly suggest following this account. It's just all about like breaking cycles and reconnecting, being a reconnected parent. It's one of the many parenting accounts that I really love, and sometimes I just need these like nuggets of inspiration. It's just how I really work. I'm a quote person. I'm a words girl. I really just like to digest and think about things that I see and read, and it helps me remember, even if, you know, it's something I already know. So they shared a quote, I guess, from them, but they shared a bit of wisdom about cycle breakers. And they said, "You move away from the excuse of my parents were dysfunctional, so I am dysfunctional. And you rewire the generational line so that you pass on to your children a more healed and whole, energetic version of yourself." Parenting. Really love that. because it is very easy to trap ourselves in a victim line of thinking. My parents were dysfunctional, so I'm dysfunctional too. I'm messed up because my parents were messed up and there's nothing we can do about it. When you put yourself in a place of victimhood, you can't fix the next generations. The thing is, being a cycle breaker is brutally hard. Let's not get it twisted. But every single person could be a cycle breaker. The damage, the toxicity, the trauma can stop with you. It can. And if you have the courage to let it stop with you, to relearn on your own how to process your own emotions, how to feel safe in your emotions, how to feel safe in your body, how to create a home you feel safe in. When you do all of this work that it takes to break a cycle, not only are you healing your own self, but you are healing a generational line in your family. Your children will not have been brought up in the way you were. They won't have the same hangups and the same issues you did. Their children will be even more healed. You're literally healing your family's lineage. It is an incredible thing, but it is super difficult. And it can feel really isolating. It's so important that you have supports, that you have channels you like watching that are respectful parents, that you have pages you follow, that you make friends that are respectful parents. Reach out, form a community, because it can feel really isolating. And when you slip up, because you will, when you repeat a toxic pattern, because often you will, when you do something and you're like, oh my God, that reminds me of insert person who raised me, it can rehash some stuff in us. So it's really important that we have good supports, good lines of communication, even if that is a therapist, but also even if that's a friend who's been there and understands and just has an ear. It's just really important to make sure you don't isolate yourself in those moments. Having a line of communication where you don't have to feel so isolated and beat yourself up when you do mess up, and you just have that support and the tools in your toolbox, really, really important to breaking cycles. So I feel like a lot of the things I said in the first video can apply to this. And obviously I speak from a place of that. So there's probably, a hint of information in the first video about parenting after a traumatic childhood. But the biggest thing I can say to that, sorry, my dog's jumping around, walking around the room, is that it is incredibly important to process your own emotions and to be able to process your emotions as a child coming from a traumatic, or as a person coming from a traumatic childhood, in order to break those cycles. And I talked a lot about how the goal is not to be calm. You don't have to be calm all the time. It's being able to move from a dysregulated state to a regulated state, which means being able to process the fact that you feel angry and not shutting down your own emotions, not slapping a band-aid of calm over it, not beating yourself up for feeling an emotion, but being able to process it in a healthy way. And therefore we show our kids how to process that. We teach them how to process their own. Not only can we physically teach them when they're having a hard moment, but them witnessing us having a hard moment and then processing it, sitting beside that emotion and grounding into our true selves, that shows them how to regulate their own emotions. So I guess a lot of the things, again, especially if you relate to this topic and you haven't watched part 1, please go watch part 1, because I don't want to repeat anything here, but there's so much I said that would apply here that I'm just not going to repeat. But I really think that you need to have supports, even if it's online. And you just need to have a lot of grace for yourself. And that's really the understanding of that you don't have to be this calm parent all the time to break a cycle. You don't have to be a calm parent all the time in general. It's unrealistic. Nobody's a calm parent all the time. Nobody. And if they tell you that, I don't know. Sure, Jan. But healing is about being able to sit with your emotions. Sit with your feelings. Because a lot of us that came from traumatic childhoods, we had traumatic childhoods because the people in our lives who were supposed to teach us these things were dysregulated all the time. They did not have any tools to regulate their own emotions, so they let their emotions explode onto us. and thus resulting in trauma of various degrees and types. It's important to understand that you might, but you're probably not going to spare your own children of everything. Like, you're probably going to mess up sometimes, or maybe even repeat a pattern. But it's important to acknowledge the fact that even understanding that you're repeating a pattern, even noticing it, acknowledging it, and not doing it again, or actively trying to explore and understand why you did it, and to create better tools for yourself to not do it in the future, that is breaking cycles. I think a lot of times we just think we have to be perfect parents and get it right all the time so that we don't screw up our kids. And that's just simply not realistic, and it's not true. Our kids are gonna have some hang up from us regardless of how perfect we are. But it's more just about not passing your unresolved trauma onto your children like your parents did to you, like your caregivers did to you, because that's how trauma happens. Trauma happens to somebody. They don't process it. They don't know how to process it. They don't seek help. They don't seek healing. They are completely dysregulated. They pass their unprocessed trauma onto their child. Their child grows up. They don't know how to deal with anything. And it's just a cycle. That's why we call it a cycle. And that's why we call those cycle breakers. Because even though we have all that trauma from lines of generations, we deal with it. We take the burden of coping with it, of healing it within ourselves so that we don't pass it on to our children. And again, I said that before, but peace arises naturally when we feel safe regardless of the emotion we're feeling in that moment. Peace arises when we know that we are safe, even if we're angry. We're not going to be angry forever. We're going to sit with the anger. We're going to process the anger. We're going to sit with the sadness. We're going to process the sadness. We feel safe. I know I'm fine. Nobody's going to yell at me for being angry. I'm not going to get screamed at for crying. It's okay. And peace will start to naturally arise in those moments, and we will feel calmer despite feeling roller coasters of emotions throughout the day. When we're able to sit with our feelings, process our feelings, and regulate our own emotions. So I feel like there's so many other things, like parenting after a traumatic childhood is a really deep topic. If you have more things you want me to like specifically talk about in a future video, please put them down below. I will absolutely write them down and address them. It's a huge topic, and I don't want to go too deep and all over the place, so I'm gonna jump to the next part, the next question I got, because I'm gonna have to head out soon. I'm really taking too long on this video, but it's okay. Okay, so I got this question that says, how do you gentle parent at bedtime? My 8-year-old is in and out of bed unless I stay and cuddle until they're asleep. Now, I just found this like the perfect timing question, because so I have an 8-year-old almost that is really struggling with sleep and staying in bed. And I think this is natural. I think this is normal, but I was really frustrated with it. And because I was frustrated with it, I didn't know how to deal with it. I had a hang up that I was like, you are old enough. You should be staying in bed on your own. This shouldn't be a problem. And I was being kind of like a brick wall about it. And it was not helping, obviously. And so I like talked to Cody about it, and I was like, oh, I'm so frustrated. Like, I feel like I'm not being a gentle parent. I feel like I'm not being a respectful parent. I feel like I don't know how to be a respectful parent in this situation because I just want them to go to bed. They're not staying in bed, and it's very frustrating. So one, I think it's a very natural thing that happens at this time. The more I talk to parents, the more I'm realizing, okay, this is kind of a normal thing. But then I reached out to one of my friends who I love to bounce things off of. She, you know, is also a cycle breaker. She is also respectful parenting, and we are able to just like, I highly suggest finding a friend. Like, she's, her and I are online friends. We've been online friends for years and years. So it doesn't even have to be somebody you can sit down and have coffee with. Like, we live in different countries, but we are like super close. And she is somebody that I know that I can lay down what I'm feeling and I'm not going to be judged. And it's really important that you have somebody, I think, that you can kind of, I don't know, for me it's really important because I like to bounce ideas off the people. It helps me process when I talk. So I reached out to her and it was like, hey, I am really frustrated by this. It's happening, like this is happening. I won't stay in bed. I'm really frustrated. I feel like I'm not being kind anymore. Do you have any perspective on this? Because I just feel like I just need a different perspective. I was like, are my expectations unrealistic? Like from a third party, do you think I'm like holding unrealistic expectations for this child? Do I need to like think about this more as if they were a toddler? Because when we co-sleep and we have respectful parented, well, we co-slept and have respectful parented and attached parented since day one with our first. So I'm like, is this just a hang up in my head that my kid is older and we don't hear about this as much as we hear about toddlers needing us at night? And so we think children must not need us at night. And I was like, is this the hang up that I have in my head? And I'm just explaining my process with this because maybe this will help you process yours. So she shared, I'm not gonna like say exactly what she shared, but she shared her perspective. And she actually shared that when she was younger and she had a lot of trauma at nighttime being left alone, even as a child, because she needed some comfort, she needed something, and she wasn't given that. And she still carries some of that with her as an adult. And it was exactly the perspective I needed, because I was like, ooh, I don't like sleeping alone either, really. Like, can't expect my child to not have those needs just because they're a certain age. And it's really important to remember that like that age, that cusp age, 7, 8, 9 of them, they're going from like a child that really needs you to like they are understanding that they're a part of the world, they're independent, that they are independent from their family, that they have their own ideas, that they have their own little life, and they're starting to develop that. And it's a really big developmental stage. So things are really common, like more nightmares, or like just they're starting to learn their own place in the world. They might, have some troubles on the playground. They're just processing a lot more than they were when they were a little bit younger. But they're not quite there yet to be able to process all these things on their own. And so a lot of times things can come up at bedtime. Because if you think about your day, a lot of us are finally calm and we just spend connected time at bedtime. So our kids look forward to that and they need that processing time to process their day and to feel connected and feel close, because they're busier all day. They're out doing their own things. If they're in public school, then they're off in school, and maybe they have an extracurricular, maybe they want to go play at a friend's house, then it's dinner, it's the bustle of bedtime. And then by the end of the day, they can really feel like they didn't really see you. They didn't really spend time with you. They didn't connect, and they really need that connection at this age. And so these are all things that I've been able to reflect on in the past couple of weeks. So what I did about this, Cody and I, we had a conversation about this. We asked like what our boundaries are, what we needed at night. And then when we had that conversation, we talked to our child about this. It was like, hey, mom and dad really need that time in the evening. We need time in the evening to spend ourselves. That's when we have like our date nights. I just asked like, what are you needing at night? How are you feeling? What's causing you to get up? Are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Are you scared? Are you lonely? And I just listened while my child expressed what they were feeling. And it turned out that, my child was feeling a little bit lonely, a little bit scared at night, sometimes a little bit hungry. So we came up with a plan together. How we do this is like everything was on the table, but nothing was agreed upon. It's like, okay, throw out your ideas. What do you want? Sleep in your bed. Okay, we'll write it down as an idea. Sleep on your floor. Okay, we'll write it down as an idea. You sleep in my bed. Okay, we'll write that down as an idea. Wrote down everything. How about you sleep in your own bed? Wrote that down as an idea. How about we cuddle for 20 minutes and then I go on my own and you stay in your bed. We just came up with all these solutions, and then we went through the list together. Okay, well, you sleeping in my bed doesn't really work. You're a lot bigger now. I like to sleep on my own. It gets too hot in my bed, so that's not going to work for both of us. So let's take away this idea. And we went through the list like that. And we were able to come up with a solution that worked for everybody. Compromise. Not only was I teaching my child incredible compromise skills in a very real situation, but by talking to my friend, I also realized that like I had a set expectation because of my child's age, because I felt like what they should need at that age. And I needed to kind of rethink that on my own. And it's just definitely something that I was carrying, you know, from societal expectations and from my own childhood. And that's why I really like relaying and like asking a good friend like that, and processing that idea on my own. So it's something that can really work well for you. And so we had a thing where it's like, okay, on nights you really need me, you're welcome to come. My husband and I go to bed at different times. So I go to bed early and he comes to bed late because he gets his like hobby time done in the evenings. He wakes up later than I do. I like my time in the morning. So it was a compromise for some nights where Dad and I weren't having a date at night. We weren't watching shows or we weren't doing anything. Sometimes, okay, you can come to bed and lay in my bed to fall asleep, and Daddy will take you back to your bed when he comes to bed. So you can fall asleep in my bed for a little bit. Or some nights it's Daddy will stay with you while you fall asleep, or Mommy will, and we will read an extra story, or we'll sit and make sure we have a conversation over a snack. And we just found different ways. And because we had the conversation, my child knows that sometimes like we really need time to ourselves, and you're gonna have to go to bed on your own tonight. But like there's that open communication of, okay, that's a boundary I'm holding right now. Like, what other supports do you need to help you go to sleep good tonight? We learned that like a magnesium spray helps them sleep better at night. So we incorporated that. And so it was just something that I was making more of a struggle than it needed to be, because I was being a bit of a brick wall about it. I was having an unrealistic expectation because I wasn't acknowledging enough the emotional needs of my child. And that happens, right? But the point is that we can reevaluate and we can go back and change what we were doing before and apologize and come up with a better solution. I hope that is helpful for you if you are having this issue too, or if you're the person that asked this question, because it's totally something we dealt with. And now I felt like we didn't actually even need to follow the set plan we created, because it's really just naturally adjusted. And honestly, that child is sleeping in their own bed and not getting up as much at night on their own. So a lot of the times the solutions we came up with, we don't even need to do. But when it is a problem that we're getting up a lot and over, then we just have those solutions to reach for. And if they stop working, we know we can come back together and be like, hey, this isn't working for me. Like, I don't like this. And come up with a different solution. So anyway, you guys, I have to go grocery shopping. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope this was helpful, some real life examples. If this inspired any questions that you want me to chat about in the future parenting vlogs, let me know. I hope you enjoyed part 1 and part 2. I think this is a little bit shorter, but I can talk forever, so sorry. I hope you enjoyed today's sip and share. We will see you in my next one. Let me know what you want me to talk about next, and yeah, chat with me down below about whatever this brought up for you. I would love to have conversations with you guys. Just listen or help in any way I can, or just like hear what your experience is. I would just really love this community, and it's very helpful for not only you but me. I really find it very helpful. So anyway, you guys, thank you for watching. We'll see you in my next one.